to another episode of Everyday People with your host, Jesus Washington. And today I have a very, very, very special guest, and all of you are going to love her and get to know her more. And this is Nydia, Ganja, the
Clergy.
clergy woman. Yes, and this is oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Taken by a dear friend, Yana.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about your name.
Nydia GanjaClergy.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I stepped into that name, I want to say about a year ago. When I first, a little over a year ago, yes, when I went to the Cannabis Festival, National Cannabis Festival in Washington, D.C. And it was the first time that I had been back at my alma mater, Howard University, where I got my master's and bachelor's in physical therapy. But I wasn't there for physical therapy. I was there to talk about cannabis and to talk about the spirituality of cannabis, which is where this name comes from. So I use cannabis as sacrament, and I study per ancient methods of per Netra Kemet, an ancient church in Kemetic Egypt. And so, yeah, I use cannabis as prayer and to manifest.
That's
And
you
then
know,
I educate
yes.
and advocate as a result, right?
Yes. So, like today on Everyday People
Yeah.
with Nydia, we're going to talk about the educational aspects and the spiritual aspects of cannabis, because that's her background and that's what she, specializes in. And a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about I call it the tree of life. That's what I personally call it, and it is for me very spiritual. I don't just sit there and do it, just to do it or just to smoke cannabis, but I do it for spiritual reasons, to open up like my chakras, to open up like brain cells that I've never used before. That's why I use it. And so we're gonna talk deeply into this subject, and tell us what you do.
Well, I have 3 non-plant touching cannabis businesses. One of the first ones that I have is Noted. It's a vertical search engine for cannabis and hemp research. And the second one I run is UR Wellness LLC. And that one I run by myself. But it's all about collaboration with other like-minded, especially women, but folks in and around the cannabis industry that are tapping into the integration aspect and spiritual aspect around plant medicine. And also there's this drive to go back towards shamanic ways. In other words, just recognizing that there's spirit in everything, right? And respecting the fact that everything has spirit. And so, that being said, we know cannabis is a herb, just like basil, just like pepper, just like any of the other herbs that you have in your cabinet right now. And so, how do you consume and commune with her versus have a stigma against one molecule? And that just perpetuates the same kind of division that we show with sexism or racism. It's just we're focusing on one thing instead of focusing on this entire plant that has so much value. And we're also moving away from, standard medicine. And so as we're recognizing the spirit in everything and we're moving towards autonomous healthcare, because that's kind of what it is recognizing that you have autonomy over yourself,
Right.
your body, right?
Right.
And that you can then use these herbs and plant medicines to manipulate your body and cells to be able to regenerate in ways that we never knew before, right? We've heard of miraculous healings from many plant medicines, including cannabis with cancer and so forth. So, these are very difficult waters to maneuver and to understand, and my point is to create safe spaces and circles where we can discuss that, and we can learn in ways that we haven't learned before. Our standard ways of learning are just not working, and so being able to take people into the forest, being able to provide safe spaces for people to commune and tap into those different spiritualities of the different plants, of trees, connecting with trees again and grounding their feet down in earth. So that's what I do with UR Wellness. I also have basic education on there with endocannabinoid and learning the different parts of the plant, because that's important as well without having to spend thousands of dollars on a certification or a degree.
So you learn like the science behind the cannabis tree.
You learn more of, I don't get into the science because I'm not a pharmacist. I don't go into the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. Eventually I will because I've got a lot of friends that do. But right now I'm just doing an overview basic so people can understand, because there's a real misunderstanding of what this is and
Right.
what all the cannabinoids mean. A lot of people think it's just THC, or they think it's just CBD and THC, or they don't
Right.
understand that this plant has over 500 different molecules that have been identified at this time, right? That's all we understand about it. In our traditional medicine, we're used to looking at one thing at a time. And so I try to expand that for people and provide simple ways of understanding it. And then we can get into the more complicated stuff one-on-one, or if that's something that you desire to know the pharmacokinetics and know how it works on a really cellular level, then I've got people that I can refer you to that can help you with that.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's about expanding the network, because I can't do it
Definitely.
all, and there's other people that do other parts of it really a lot better than I do. So I have to recognize that too.
Definitely. For sure. For sure. I wanted to share a story with you and the audience.
Yeah.
Like, I know personally, like, friends and family that have, like, healed from cannabis. For instance, Uncle Mikhail, he had cancer. He healed from it. And I know another friend that got into a horrible accident, shouldn't have been with us, but kept smoking cannabis and it healed him.
I actually had a life-threatening diagnosis, and I've been healed from it. I claim healing from it, and I do use my understanding and awareness of my endogenous cannabinoid system to maintain that balance at any given time. So if I feel like I'm getting out of whack, I know where to go with my different cannabinoids or resources within and around this plant in order to balance myself. But yes, cancer is one of many diagnoses, and it's all associated to deficiencies around this system and the exposure to a lot of toxins that we have around us on a daily basis. And so having that awareness and knowing how to navigate those systems is what I help individual clients with. But my website provides all the general education so people can go and get that. And
Yeah,
then,
let's go ahead, share with everybody your website.
It's www.urwellnessllc.com, and the U and the R of the alphabet. So it's not your YOUR, it's urwellnessllc.com. Third business I run is with my son. He's an 8-year-old little star seed. I think he's like about 3,000 years old inside of his 8-year-old body. And he invented a company with me called Got Terpenes, where we teach about the cannabis plant at the level of a child, because I realized that if I couldn't explain it to my kid, I couldn't explain it to other people. And when he demonstrated understanding of it, I was like, boom, we invented a company. So we sell t-shirts and merchandise that start the conversations at www.got-terpenes.com. And we also have a coloring book that we sell on Amazon that you can tap into so that you can understand, like, because terpenes are what really cultivate the experience around when you consume. So it's not the amount of THC and the amount of CBD in the plant, it's actually the terpenes in it, and that's going to tell you whether or not you're going to have more of an uplifting experience or more of a drowsy experience. And so, yeah, we figured out how to do that at the level of a child. We put it in coloring books and on clothes, and
In coloring books?
yeah, so
Can I
that's what
see
we're
that
doing.
book,
Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta see
It's
this.
a little yeah.
And this is a kid's
Forgive
coloring
me. Yeah.
book. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a kid's coloring book. Trying to figure out,
This is knowledge.
Yes.
I've always said to myself, if I ever have a child, I will actually teach them. Because, first of all, certain things are just natural in this world and they're gifted to us.
It's a herb.
It's herb.
It's a herb. Yeah,
Yes.
you can use it in many different ways. I'm writing a book on how many different ways you can consume and commune with her. Because it's not just smoking and edibles and vaping and topicals. Like, there's...
And then I hear you saying her. Cannabis is a female?
Well, no, there's both divine masculine and divine portions of the plant, just like almost anything on this earth. Like we all, even though I'm in female form, there's also, I have masculine in me as well, right?
Yes.
And so this plant has that ability. So right now, the United States categorizes like cannabis as the female portion and hemp as the male portion.
Oh.
And so hemp
Isn't
is,
hemp and isn't the same? Or no?
it is the same plant, yeah. It just has to be diagnosed differently, or pardon me, categorized and labeled differently in order for us to understand, and in order for them to make money, and in order for there to be different tax structures, and there's a lot behind that title.
Wow.
Yeah.
We need you. We need you, Habibti, Nydia. We need you.
So yeah, no, it's a beautiful plant. There's just so much to it. And getting into this industry doesn't have to be all about touching the plants and growing the plant. It's important that people do that, but yeah, there's a lot that you can do outside of that, and education is where we stand. And bringing kids into it is really important because they're the next generation and they can heal the earth with this plant. So
Yes. And where do you guys go to teach?
we teach all over. So I have online courses that you can book on my website. I also do in-person presentations. I set up terpene stations. I allow people to really experience. I teach people how to understand and kind of become their own cannabis sommelier. So literally after like one of my presentations, one of my clients was like, oh my gosh, like I need to go home and experience my cannabis like differently, and called me back a few days later and she was like, oh my gosh, like now I can't even smoke cannabis the same. Like now I feel like I'm, being bougie about my cannabis. And I'm like, that's the point. And I'm like, yeah,
Right.
you've got to be bougie about it. And you've got to ask, for certain things in dispensaries and not accept anything less when you exchange your money for medicine, because this medicine is not covered by insurance.
Right.
So you have a huge right to be super picky about it. And I really encourage that to be really picky about it and even bougie about it.
Yes. Well, all my friends are bougie about it.
Yes, that's the way it should be.
I never understood until they explained it to me.
Yes.
I never understood really.
Only smoke the good stuff.
Yes, always smoke the good stuff. See, I've always have. When I, first started like experiencing marijuana at 30 years old, I always laugh at
That's
myself.
awesome.
At 30 years old, that was my first experience, mashallah. A long time before. A long time. I was always
Doubtful.
scared. I was always scared.
A lot of people are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm partnering with a few different places in and around Detroit where we can create safe circles for people to come experience for the first time if they'd like to. Because a lot of people don't want to experience by themselves. Like, what do they do? How do they put it? Where does it go? How do they light it? Like, there's so many questions. But this is something that can help balance a system that we have inside our own body. And so people should have access to safe circles where they can come and they can giggle, and nobody's going to look at them different for giggling, or, nobody's going to give them so much that they're going to puke, or, and so, nothing like that.
Right.
That way they can come and experience, and yeah.
Yella, you gotta tell us more. You gotta tell us more. More.
Well,
Educate
so-
us.
Yeah, no,
You gotta
absolutely. So
educate
I
us.
do, right now I'm doing monthly walks with Pink Sesh, and I collaborate with the Pink Sesh. Which
What's
is
Pink Sesh?
The Pink Sesh is a community of women, both online and in person, that get together. And they do different kind of activities. They've got an activity at the Schwitz. I do forest bathing sessions where we can get out and just understand how to hug trees, what the importance of trees are, what importance they have in religions, and how that connects back to our cannabis and why it's been taken. Anyways, there's so many connections to that.
Which tree do they hug? The cannabis tree?
No, all trees.
Oh, all trees.
I was hugging your tree outside of the station, actually, right before you pulled up.
Really?
Yeah. I was
Wow.
totally hugging the tree. I exchange energy with trees all the time.
They have a whole entire group in Mexico, and it's a woman that connect with trees. Woman.
Yeah. Well, women are the original medicine women. Like, we're the ones that developed medicine. Like, while the men were out hunting and doing their rights, we were doing our rights, right? And we had to raise the kids. We didn't always have access to meat. So we started to understand herbs and small trees that were around us, and bushes and berries, and we would discover, and we're also the owners of fire because we started to understand how you alchemize some of these herbs in order to create something else. Because sometimes when you heat them, or when you put them in tea, or when you mush them, it does different things, right?
And mashallah, why nobody say women do all this one? Well, you're right about that. I never thought about that.
No, our entire industries have been created based off of ideas in the backs of women, right? But it's the patriarchy and the church that came in and took some of that away. And so that's a lot of the things that I go into are back into history because I don't look at history as let me pick a date and say this is when the world started and this is when this started and let's go forward. To me, that doesn't make sense because then that ignores everything that happened prior to that. It completely is like, okay, you just pick that date and then what happened the day before and 2 days before and 3 days before. It's like, wait, hold on, stop, time out. I don't accept that. And so instead of that, I take history and I don't call it history. First of all, there are stories. There are oral narratives. There are oral stories that have been passed down generation to generation. And it's important to our practices. It's important to our heritage and our world and global culture, right? So understanding and going backwards, because a lot of people choose, like with cannabis, for example, it's Harry Anslinger, and they choose him and they blame him for, the Marijuana Tax Act of the 1930, whatever. And that's why when cannabis became prohibited, and indeed that's part of the story, but there's a whole host of stories that came before that that caused that to happen. And he was in the pockets of a lot of people, and those people were in the pockets of a lot of people, and all of that stuff matters. And so understanding that and understanding the history of this plant, where it comes from, the stories around it, like, there was a group of women called the Scythians that the Romans were very scared of. And these women are the ones that held the synth that the Grim Reaper holds. And they used to cut down cannabis and hemp, and those were part of their rites that they would put into ceremony to transition people from this earth onto death. And so they were feared. But these stories are hidden from us. They're taken away from us, but they're still here in one way, shape, or form because we have the Grim Reaper, and we still celebrate that. And there's still parts of those stories that we celebrate that connect back to this mother plant. And when we commune with her and have those stories with her, it's important for us to really understand what you're tapping into, that it's not just a puff of smoke. And what does that mean when you're becoming aware of yourself and integrating, okay, this trauma, like all of a sudden you might think back, you might hear a song while you're smoking and think back to a certain trauma, or all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, that happened when this. And so taking that moment and taking the history and taking your generational trauma and taking all of that, wrapping up and being like, wow, that makes sense. This is how I move forward with life now. Like, okay. So yeah, I incorporate cannabis. I also incorporate psilocybin and other plant medicines to ensure that there's a really well-rounded experience for the individual, if that's the case and if that's what they choose. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about the experience, but after a station break.
Yes.
Okay?
Absolutely.
So you are watching Everyday People live, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and all top social media platforms. Make sure you like, you follow, you share, you subscribe, and you comment. Okay? And thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. أعزائي المشاهدين، شكرا لمشاهدة Everyday People على قناة WJZZ Cool TV. And thank you also to my sponsor, Pink Cab Express. And if you would like to sponsor Pink Cab Express, if you would like to sponsor Everyday People, Everyday People, the podcast, you can hit this Cash App, capital J, 112233, capital W. And we have a lot to talk about. And today's guest is Miss
Nydia GanjaClergy.
the one and only. The one and only. That's going to teach us a lot of things that we've never heard before, and breaks down the science. She broke down the science of cannabis and why it's good for you and why it's very spiritual and why it's healing. And now we're going to talk about the experience.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, what was your first experience like?
I remember everything.
Do you mind sharing?
Life changing. Yes. Yes. So here's what happened. So my first time was at when I would turn 30 years old, and it was I was married at that time, and I
Okay.
was living out in Farmington Hills, and it was me and you know my ex during that relationship, and then he brought a friend over,
Mm-hmm.
and so we were basically so they brought it, whatever, rolled it, and they're like, "Yalla, you have to try this."
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. So I try it, and then I didn't feel anything in the beginning, and then I tried, kept trying, and then I started laughing out of nowhere, like just laughing. I couldn't stop laughing. It was just like a lot of laughter that came out of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like this positive energy take over me,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh my god, I've never experienced this before. I didn't think that's what marijuana did. Open up your channels,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it did. It literally opened up my channels, and then from that moment on, my life changed. That's when I had my spiritual breakthroughs,
Okay.
and that's when how you're like breaking down. You have like these conversations with yourself to understand your past, your present, your future,
Mm-hmm.
and you put all these pictures together, and that was the moment for me 6 years ago, no, 7 years ago,
Okay.
and when I basically experienced that and experienced whatever I experienced spiritually, I wanted to get into like natural medicine. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And
do.
I did. And I was like really firm about like using natural medication to open up my channels and to connect with the spirits,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like the moment that I took the first puff, it took me somewhere I was scared to go.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It took me to the other side, and it was an overwhelming experience. But I had to go through it. And if it wasn't for that experience, I wouldn't be where I am, where I'm meant to be.
Right.
So I had to go through the breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what helped me.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very beautiful experience. And now, like when I do smoke, I always do like a prayer before.
That's beautiful.
And it's like an internal thing that I do.
Yes.
And then I explain that to my friends. I don't just smoke the smoke.
Yeah.
And I don't smoke all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my energy boosts when I smoke cannabis.
Mm.
Like I get more energy for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand people that just like sleep all day and just like I don't think they understand the purpose of it. They don't understand it spiritually, the tree itself.
I don't think there's many people that actually smoke and sleep. I don't think that's
I know
normal.
some people. I know.
Okay, yeah.
I know some people.
Okay.
Yeah, I know some people. I've
She's
seen
like,
it.
no.
I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. How do you do that?
I don't
didn't
surround
understand.
myself with those people then, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it with my own 2 eyes, and I just never
I
understood.
can't. Yeah, I don't have that effect with it. at
Like I
all.
know, like sometimes if the cannabis is very strong,
Yeah.
like super
Well, and the
strong,
terpene profile will make you kind of feel that way too.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it'll put me to sleep. Like it will be like an overwhelming experience. But that's like very like here and there, you know.
But there's ways to deal with that so that you have a lot of energy. Like if you do start to feel that way, there's ways, like if it's in the middle of the day, that you can kind of compensate with that. Take a little power nap and up you go and you're back at it, because sometimes you do need that. It's okay to take naps. So we're taught in our society that we can't take naps. We're taught that resting and feeding ourselves, and in terms feeding ourselves, our soul, right?
That's all.
Feeding our bodies what it needs is not okay. Like it's not okay to get up in the middle of your workday and go take a walk in the forest, or go sit at the side of the lake and do your work there, or take a 20-30 minute nap, or sometimes it's a 2 hour nap, but then you get up and do your work. Like that's not accepted in our society. We're expected to be workhorses, and we're expected to have powerless women that have a bunch of babies that create a workforce, right? Like this is what a lot of things are structured around. Like these are structures that are put in place, and we've accepted them largely, and I don't accept those for myself. That's why I've created my own lane. I don't want a piece of anybody's table. I want to create my own table. I'll be in people's rooms. Sure, I'll listen to what they have to say. Not a problem. I got a lot to learn. Not all day long, but I'm building this over here.
Right.
So it's, I don't want to live by those norms. Those norms don't fit me anymore, and I feel like they don't fit a lot of people anymore, and that's why a lot of people are seeking plant medicine and are trying to get out there. And to be honest, there's not a lot of healthcare that is available for people for mental health. So those resources are really limited as well. And so what do you do? Like, how do you go? And you hear about people taking mushrooms, and you hear about people smoking weed, and you see it all the time. You'll see celebrities all the time smoking and puffing it up, but a lot of us that are actually doing the work, we're being shadow banned. We're being erased and not being allowed to show actual education and advocacy around it instead of the recreational use of it. And so it is what it is, but it's a fight that we have to
Well, you're making
take
a
on.
difference now.
Yes.
And this
absolutely.
is why we have a show called Everyday
100%.
People, to have unique teachers on here. Unique people that bring you educational, okay, so Everyday People is about unique people who have worked many jobs and did so many things, okay, but they have a talent, they have a gift to share with themselves and the world.
Yes.
And you represent the show.
Yes.
And you are the truth. So I only bring people that tell the truth.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're telling the truth. You're telling the truth about a lot of things. So we're going to get more into it.
Yeah.
And tell us more about what you do.
Oh, okay. So, my goodness, I collaborate with people in the industry to help people level up. A lot of people don't know how to get in the industry. Some people don't want to touch the plants, like I said earlier. So how do they do that? And I've been collaborating with Counterculture Connect, and I also collaborated with Sunshine Sweets, and we're doing a party called Highlight at Detroit A Bloom. Which is a whole experience that's happening on September 17th. So part of what I do is I throw events where people can feel comfortable and people can have dope experiences, get to know us, network with people in the industry, and see how it is that we're doing it. And a lot of us are actually open to talking about it. So you can come to this event on the 17th and you can network with folks that are creating edibles or selling psilocybin or I probably shouldn't have said that. Erase that. Potentially, not really. Anyways. But
you are live!
Yay! We'll have curated vendors. We'll have, let me stick to the script here. Curated vendors, immersive experiences. We've got a dope photo booth by Electric Love Photos. Sunshine Sweets is going to have an infused mocktail bar. Every attendee that purchases a ticket prior to any of the vendors and sponsors will have a coloring book. We're going to have puff and paint. It's going to be consumption friendly, but, we're not necessarily going to have vendors that are going to be selling. So, yeah. A coloring station is going to be available, music, food and refreshments, garden strolls, and a hell of a good time. Because honestly, we're just trying to bring the community together and see where we fit in. Some of these folks that have come to us as vendors don't have logos or don't have their business cards, and we're like, nope, come on, let's do it in 24 hours, turn that around, get a logo, get a business card. We want to make sure that you capture and that you really come into this industry and understand that you can be welcome into this space, that it is a welcoming space, but you got to do the work too.
You have to do the work.
You
There's
gotta
no
show
way
up.
around it. You have to show up. And
You
we
gotta
were
show
talking
up.
about that before the show.
Yeah.
And you were teaching me something about myself that I did not know. You said you always show up to this show. And it's true. I'm showing up for myself like the way you put it.
Yeah.
And it's
well, and that's why it's important for us to show up for each other, right?
Yes.
No
Yes.
matter what the cause is because if another person in the industry is doing the work, it's important to collab, to find ways where you can support them or level them up, because it's not about handing out, it's about handing up, right? So
handing up. Yes,
So,
and also we're gonna be shooting the episode with Walking with Jesus at the
yes, at
event.
Highlight.
Yes,
That's gonna be
yes, it's
so
gonna be the
dope.
third episode for my second podcast, Walking with Jesus, and for those of you who live outside of the United States of America, of course, you can see it on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. Woo! All right, yeah, well, let's continue.
Let's continue. Yeah. So my first, we were talking about experiences, and I wanted to go back. My first experience was when I was 14.
14?
Yeah.
MashaAllah, 14 years old?
I smoked a cigarette the day before.
Oh.
I had a Newport cigarette the day before, and my friends were like, "Oh, you like that?" Because I got high off of the Newport cigarette. I don't know if you guys have smoked cigarettes before. There's a lot of chemicals in there that will get you high.
I started at 36 because I never experienced it at 13 and 14.
It
But it's going to stop.
it gives you a buzz.
It really, I do get high from a cigarette. I'm not going to lie, I do.
It gives you a buzz. Whether it's menthol or not, the menthol gives you more of a buzz. But anyways, yeah, I went straight for Newports, which is like straight menthol. There's like, I don't know, 30 some different chemicals in there. Got me really high, and I loved it. And then the next day my friends were like, no, we know what you're gonna like, and they gave me cannabis, and I fell in love immediately. But since then, like I said, I've learned how to heal myself with it, and it's been a dope journey. Because nobody knew how to heal what I had. My doctors, I went to nutritionists, I went to dietitians, all the things. They didn't know how to help me. I had to figure it out myself. So like I straight up threw out anything that had chemicals in my house.
Wow.
And I learned how to clean naturally. I learned how to like do all my lotions and hair care, and it was yeah, it was a learning curve. I've tried some really weird stuff. But now I've figured it out, and I know how to live my life without deodorant and, move around without needing, like, do I smell? Nobody can smell from TV.
No, you don't smell.
Exactly. I
You don't
good.
smell. You smell
So,
good.
Brush! But no. So, all of those things were part of healing myself, right? And they talk about that the people who have healed themselves from a lot of different illnesses or from major illnesses have made a lot of radical changes, like their nutrition, the way they exercise, the way their environment and things like that. And so that was part of my journey. And so I like to teach people that as well. And that's what I've learned through my journey with cannabis and consuming her. It went from really recreational, not understanding her at all, to having a professional experience with her as a physical therapist, because that was another life that I lived for 17 years. I left physical therapy to jump into cannabis. Like it was
wow.
I made a really big shift, and that was around the time that I was sick. So I just literally got sick of the entire healthcare system. I was like, goodbye. I was like, I will not be employed here, and I will not be treated here. Yeah. I was like, I won't be treated here. I will not be employed here. I don't want any part of the system, and I haven't been back. And I've been able to heal myself through that. So it's been a dope journey, for real. And the ability to go from recreational to having more conscious consumption with her can be really simple, or it can be really complicated depending on, which resources you choose and which way you go. And so that's what I like to do, is to make it accessible and the level of a child. So, do you want to learn some terpenes?
I do want to learn some terpenes. Yeah, let's learn.
So, what do you like in terms of your cannabis? Do you like it to be like gassy, or do you like it to be fruity?
Fruity.
You like fruity?
I like fruity.
Do you like fruity like lemon, or like fruity like flowers, or fruity like berries?
No, flowers.
Flowers?
Like flowers, like rose petals.
Ooh. Check this one out.
Oh.
Tell the audience what you see there.
All right.
So this one's geraniol.
Okay.
And what does it help with?
So it helps with pain, inflammation, microbes, bacteria, rest, tumor, oxidants, mosquitoes?
Mm-hmm.
For real?
Mm-hmm.
No wonder why I don't get bit by the mosquitoes.
And where do you find it in?
Oh, no.
Tell them all the different things you can find.
Wow. In rose?
Yeah, because you said roses.
I did say rose.
Directly said that, yeah.
Yes.
So that's why I turned to this page immediately. What are the other things?
lemon peel,
Mm-hmm.
blackberry, beet, and
Geranium.
geranium.
Mm-hmm.
So it's found in all this?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So whenever you get that rose type of smell, you can also associate it with any of these, and you can associate it with helping you with all of that.
Wow, so I've been like healing myself from
Pain,
all of this.
inflammation, bacteria, microbes. This is why they proved, research was able to prove that it helps with that virus that we all dealt with for a couple of years.
Wow. So this is proven science. This
Like,
is proven
it's
science,
science.
Habibis. This one. This one, science behind cannabis, mashallah.
And that's just one of 500, right?
Right.
Yeah, like it's absolutely incredible the rabbit holes you can go with in this plant. And so it's like instead of having stigma about people that are smoking, or instead of saying, I don't like the smell, like, is it you don't like that smell? It's will definitely turn you on. You know,
Oh,
like
so
some
there's just
people
no
might not
specific
like
ones.
not champa, but they like sage, or some people might not like Palo Santo, but they like, I don't know, musk, whatever.
Well, I gotta buy this. For sure.
Yeah, so you can find that one on Amazon. We published it on
Ooh,
Amazon.
yes,
And
from Amazon, you learn.
then
Yes, about
coloring
terpene
book.
coloring book. Yes, you really need to understand the different scents, right?
Yeah.
The different scents of the weed is what makes the
Yeah.
difference in
Because
that
look,
helps
this
with
is one that has sage. Like, sage directly has that one in it, so people might not like this one or, some of the other things in there.
What does that say?
So there was somebody that asked me, they're like, well, what do you think about people that don't like the scent of cannabis? And I'm like, well, it's kind of like sage, it might just be working.
Yeah,
If you don't like the scent of sage and it's in your house, what do you tell people? It's working, right?
it's working.
It's working. Have
It's
a good day.
working.
Like,
It's like a contradiction within a contradiction. Oh man, that's deep. Oh shoot, you got me laughing. You got me thinking about twice, and I'm like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like laughing now. This is
I
so
didn't share any of
funny.
my cannabis with her before this, okay? Just saying.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Wow, this is very educational. This is a lot of knowledge. A lot of knowledge that some of this I did not know. Like, I knew, like, the smell was really important, especially for me. The smell of the
So
cannabis.
want me to drop a little history bomb on you?
Yeah.
Okay. Cannabis. Think
Mhm.
about the word.
Mm-hmm.
So, canvas is the Dutch word for cannabis. Canvas, that you paint on canvas. Our wagons were covered with canvas. Our sails were made out of canvas, right?
Right.
Cannabis, also, if you break down the word canna, used to be spelled with a K. And canna is also short for canine, right?
Yes.
Dog.
Yes.
Okay. Bis is short for two. So two dog star. So it's related to the two dog star. Just like you can relate the spores of psilocybin to space dust. So there's questions of these plants being here before even human civilization. There's depictions of them in Egypt and all kinds of.
That was my next question.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, like, you studied the history of, like, Egyptian history
Yeah.
and the cannabis.
In relations to cannabis, yeah.
You will teach us. What you learn?
So there's depictions of a goddess Sheshat, Seshat, on the walls of Egypt. And she has the hieroglyphs, and she has the actual cannabis star above her head, and she's writing down on a scroll. And it's thought that between her, it's funny that I said thought, that between her, Goddess Sheshat, and Goddess Thoth is where language came from and was born from, between thought and ascension, right? And yeah, so, and there's also the stone date theory with Terence McKenna that talks about psilocybin being how humans and their evolutionized, right? And so taking those two plant medicines and fusing them together, and those histories, they're both depicted in Egypt. And so, yeah, it's believed that the divine scent of the plant was created so that you could attract source with her smoke. And so they used to burn 9 pounds of cannabis in temples a day. And they
9 pounds?
yeah, and they would change the terpenes by the hour. And
Whoa.
that's how you would tell time.
What? That's deep. I never learned this before. Why they don't teach this one in school, Habibti? Habibti means my love in Arabic.
It goes against a lot of the current teachings that we are teaching right now, and what we're supposed to be living, and what you're supposed to get a good job, darling, and marry a good man, and have your kids, and get them in the workforce, and make sure they're taught and they're productive members of society. Don't make sure that they're leaders. Don't make sure that they change the world. Don't give them those tools. We're not told that directly, right? But it's like the minute that they can speak, what do you want to be when you grow up? Immediately hedging them into a hole. I tell my son, I homeschool my son for this reason, because I don't believe the school systems can do justice for the type of education that my son needs. And that's, yeah. It's deep stuff. It's really intense stuff, and it goes really deep. There's political ties to it. Some people can say that there's conspiracy theories tied to like historical points and dates, and how that has to do with hemp versus the political goings-ons and ramblings that they just cover the stories with. And so it's interesting stuff. Egypt has been pillaged. There were civilizations before then. I'm not discounting the Sumerians in any way, shape, or form, or any of the other civilizations that were around. We talk about the Lemurians and the Atlanteans in my home all the time, and we go back beyond. Like I said, history is not at a certain date and you move forward. If you do it that way, it's really simple. But if you start just looking backwards and looking backwards and looking backwards, it's never ending, the things that you can uncover, and the connections that you can make, and that type of breakthrough to how we need to move forward in our society and collectively are the teachings that I'm doing my best to bring forward.
Yeah.
So, yeah, through this plant and tapping into Goddess a shot.
Wallah, you are a goddess. Goddess who, Habibti?
Thank you.
Yalla, you are a goddess? Yalla, say it.
Thank you.
You are a goddess.
I am a goddess.
You are a goddess.
I am a goddess.
And you
I'm
know
a
you are.
Goddess.
You know you are.
Yeah.
And you're here to bring the knowledge of the cannabis.
Yes, I am here to bring the knowledge and the education surrounding it, and for her to be heard. She needs to be heard. She's been raped and pillaged. We've destroyed this plant, and she's been taken out of our toolbox. Like, cannabis used to be grown on every acre of farmland in the United States before 1930s.
For real? What happened, mashallah?
Do you know the word budget comes from cannabis?
No.
Get bud.
Get bud?
Bud get. Budget.
Okay.
Bud get.
Oh,
Get bud. No, I'm serious.
I know.
You
would know the history
trade
behind, right?
You would have to trade in a certain amount of cannabis, and then whatever you were farming in order to get your amount, get your pay. Like, as a farmer, that was part of the deal. Like, it was.
They were
budget.
selling hashish back in the day, mashallah.
Yeah. George Washington, he has a whole thing on it. George Washington missed his crop and it seeded. Yeah. Oh yeah, George Washington totally used to grow. Oh,
And
yeah.
it's in history.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna Google this one for sure, but this is why I needed you on this show.
There's so much, yeah. But I love what I do, and I love teaching children and making the spaces available and finding people in communities that are desiring the education, even if it's, in someone's home and they just got a bunch of moms and kids that want to learn, then that's what we're going to do. We make and affect the world little steps at a time, and collaborating with folks and people in different communities to be able to bring the education is what it's all about. And so, if you want an opportunity to get to see us in person, come out on the 17th to
Yes.
highlight.
Come out, ya habibis. Come out to this
highlight.
one.
Yes. There's
Yes.
going to be so much dope stuff. It's really, we're going to have a flow artist. It's all in a garden. And we're going to have raffles with a bunch of products available. All the proceeds go to the garden, which is a nonprofit garden where they're trying to rejuvenate the flora and fauna of Detroit. So you can't go wrong.
Wow. Well, we're going to take a station break.
Yes.
And then we are going to continue for the last, I'm going to say, 15 minutes.
No problem.
All right. You are watching Everyday People live on WJZZ, Cool TV. And make sure that you're going to be, the live is streaming on Facebook, on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and all top social media platforms. Make sure you like, you follow, you subscribe, and you also comment. Okay, and thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. أعزائي المشاهدين شكرا لمشاهدة Everyday People على قناة WJZZ Cool TV. And thank you also to our sponsor, Pink Cab Express. And if you would like to be a sponsor to Everyday People, you can hit this Cash App, capital J, 112233, capital W. And today our special guest is Nydia.
GanjaClergy.
GanjaClergy. Woo!
Hey.
And, hope all of you have learned a lot of valuable information about cannabis and the spirituality of it and the history that dates back from before pre-human time. And how the Egyptians used to sell, and mashallah, George Washington budgeting on this one.
Bravo!
And we have so do you have what is your advice for first time people or users or some type of knowledge or advice that you can give them?
Reach out. There's a lot of resources out there for you. Besides, a lot of people think there's not ways to learn. You don't have to go to a dispensary to learn. If you look up cannabis education online, you're going to get a plethora of things. Look up guides. It doesn't have to be me. There's a lot of other people out there. There are nurses, Midwest Canna nurses that you can reach out to, that if you have prescriptions that you want to ask questions about, they'll go through your prescription list with you and make sure that it doesn't contradict if that's what you're scared of. But starting low and slow is really always recommended. Just like salt, when we season our food, you can continue adding, but you can't take away, right? So once you're there, you're there. And there are ways to ease if you're feeling too euphoric or too sluggish. There are ways to help that, and that's why I recommend getting a guide or educator, or at least getting some education yourself and doing some research, or finding someone that has done the research, right? That can put it in a simple manner. But dispensaries are getting a lot better. You're able to now, at least in Michigan where we're at, walk into a dispensary, and if you're in a legal state, feel free to walk in and ask. Say, hey, I've never done this before. Can you guide me through it? And there's nothing wrong with asking. As a matter of fact, we'd prefer that than you have a bad experience with this plant, because sometimes you can consume too much and not have the most favorite experience, right? But there are ways to avoid that, and that's just, using what I say is common sense in terms of, like I said, with your spices. Don't add too much. Go a little bit at a time. Like you said, your first experience, you took a pull, you waited, that didn't help. Took another pull, you waited, that didn't help. Took another pull, hey, giggles. All right, we're there. We're good. We don't need to go any further. This is good. And then sometimes you can choose to go a little further, but like I said, having that ally that can point to you in the direction where it's like, all right, consume this if you've had a little too much of that, or suck on this, or just drink that, or so that it can help you. But that's kind of the same that I would recommend a lot of integration as well. Like, it's not just smoke it. Understand that there's journaling that you should maybe take up alongside with it. There's some thoughtfulness, some awareness to your practices, understanding and now that you've heard this, you understand that there's many spiritual components to this plant. So having some awareness, there's a real giddiness that people get from going to get it. I remember when I used to purchase it from the illegal market. I'm not going to sit here in front like I didn't, okay? I'm just not. I'm not that person. But when I used to go and get it from the illegal market, you get a little rush when you left and you like had to pocket it and you know, hide it and drive it in the car. And then when you got home, it was like, whew, you know, and then you finally you get there and there's a whole like ceremony that goes to rolling it and putting it together and putting it. And so having thoughtful moments with that. If anybody gets a chance to learn a little bit about ceremony and what words have an impact on a human, please take a moment to watch a YouTube video called by Dr. Emoto, and he talks about the influence of words on water. And your words have that same effect when you're going to roll up your joint. And the funny thing is, every single time I was rolling my joint, regardless of whether I was conscious or not, I was like, I can't wait for her. She's gonna make me feel so good. Like, she smells so good. Like, hit it. And when you do that, you're speaking good things into it. So of course it's gonna bring you that relief when you need it, because that's exactly what you've been speaking into her. So you can do that with your water, you can do that with your food, you can do that with yourself, you can do that with your loved ones, and that's how you start changing and getting out of these deep depressions and these crippling anxieties that don't allow you to do anything, and being able to find freedom within yourself and within your daily life, with your family and with your community. Those are all fights that I fought myself. They haven't been easy, but you can overcome them, and cannabis can help. I'm not saying it's the only plant medicine. I'm not saying that's the only thing you have to do in order to get that. I'm saying that there's a whole host of things, but this plant can help open you up to those possibilities, and that's what I'm saying to not be scared of.
Well said.
Thank you.
Beautifully said. And you want to share one more time with everybody, like recap everything that you talked about, and
yes,
you have
my 3
4
companies.
minutes.
Okay, my 3 companies, really quick. Well, 2 that you can follow are going to be Got Terpenes. You can find us on Instagram at Got Terpenes. At got.terpenes, pardon me. You gotta say those things. I'm really shadow banned, so type the whole thing out. I'm there. And then you can also find all of my businesses are linked to my personal Instagram, Nydia GanjaClergy, which is what you see at the bottom there. You can type that in and find me as well, no spaces or dots. You Are Wellness Official is my Instagram for You Are Wellness, but you can find us at www.yourwellnessllc.com. And there you can see all the host of events. I do book clubs, I take people on forest baths, I do private sessions, I do consulting. I'm a GanjaClergy officially ordained, so I also host ceremonies with cannabis, which look very different than just having like a joint or an edible cake at your wedding. It's a little bit more of that, so you can bring education to your family at your wedding as well, as you commune and celebrate. So I just noticed it's 555 on the clock, and that's one of my favorite numbers because it means change. So like I get really, I'm like a bird. But lastly, literally check out Highlight at Detroit of Bloom. We literally have spots available for people to come, attendees. You'll get a coloring book, vendors, sponsors. We would love to have you there. If you don't know how to bring your business and highlight your business, we'd love to partner with you, show you how, and bring you aboard. So please reach out to us. You can reach out at any of the Instagrams or also at Counterculture Connect, all one word. So we look forward to seeing you or hearing from you soon.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Everyday People live at 5 p.m. every Thursday. And make sure you stay tuned for next week because I have Miss Dodie Cheyenne. And Miss Dodie Cheyenne is a poet. She's an artist. And she does many, many interesting things. And she has a story to tell and to teach all of you about life. And as all of my guests, they are all unique, all talented, and they live to share their gift with themselves and the whole entire world. So make sure you stay tuned to next week's show, and we'll see you next week. Bye.